Exactly.
Because I meet a lot of different people in that sort of category, but not to the same level intellectually, if you know what I mean. It was almost like he enjoyed, sort of a good conversation, and he enjoyed, in some ways, slipping in his added knowledge of certain subjects,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had heard he was very, very, very intelligent, very smart businessman, and I think there's a lot of people that didn't see that either. There's so, and not because of him, but because of how the media portrayed him, and people were drawn into that so much. But it almost sounds like he had. He was given so many gifts, not just in music, and it seems like he was just gifted in almost every area.
Absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt about that. You take somebody like Elvis, and I don't mean in any way to sort of disrespect Elvis's legacy or his memory, but, Elvis could sing, but that was about it, Michael could sing, he could write music, he could dance, he could play, sort of a guitar, he could play, piano, and he just, as you said, was, sort of multi-talented on many, many levels.
Yeah.
And something else about Michael. We, the fans, we felt loved by him. It wasn't just with Michael idolizing, with us idolizing Michael. Michael idolized us. And so it was a thing that went back and forth. That never went on with Elvis.
Oh, I agree with you, absolutely. And in some ways, Elvis even sort of built the walls of Graceland, sort of with barriers almost like keeping the fans out, whereas Michael was the antithesis of that and invited particularly the children and other sort of groups, to his own home. And I think in some way his love of the fans also got him into trouble to an extent, because certainly that incident in the Adlon Kempinski in Berlin was nothing more than him wanting to share the joy. I think it was blanket, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the fans. But suddenly, again, the media handed him and took it up the other way around, because there certainly would be a lot of people. I'd say if Kurt Cobain, when he was alive, was in that hotel room, the windows would be closed and he'd be in his bed. Rather than sort of, wanting to interact with all the sort of...
If it had not been that, it would have been something else. I think that Bashir was there saying, "Why are you writing on the pillow? The pillow belongs to the hotel." I mean, Michael could probably... Why would Michael care? Michael could, I'm sure, replace the pillow, because he wrote "I love you" on a pillow on that same day.
Yes, and I think that whole episode with meeting Martin Bashir was horrendous, and the person who introduced them, I don't think he really forgave them ever for that. I think it was such a horrible thing to do. A lot of people don't realize that 2 film cameras running at the same time, and Michael was doing his own sort of edit at the same time as Bashir's documentary was going, and that showed up in the trial. They were able to compare the 2 things, and thankfully, within 2 or 3 days, and Tom Messer will tell you this, sort of Bashir was absolutely humiliated that he had sort of come across with just falsities, that he sort of had edited his thing to put Michael in a bad light, and he was sent down or away as a as a bad witness, and I think and left the trial very quickly. But I mean, I think that really, really was such a level of betrayal. I suppose Michael, he never discussed that with me per se, regarding Mr. Bashir. He certainly often mentioned Tom, and in the fondest terms, but you could know that it hurt him so, and even I think want to discuss it, because he'd almost, when he'd come close to it, not so much clam up, but almost stop talking and look into space for a while, and you just knew yourself, don't go there at this point in time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and there's people that believe too that Bashir was sort of used in this way to, almost like this was a whole setup to lead towards this trial.
Michael was coming to see me, apparently. It was in the London papers only a few days before he died, which is sad as well, because he would have been out of that situation. Yes, just 1 week before, I think in some of the London papers, some of his staff had sort of released that. But there were some things that would have done together probably. He had wanted to do something together with HIV, AIDS, patients in Africa, and he was going to set up a concert in Rwanda. Well, that's sort of where Grace originally grew up. She later went and lived in Kampala and went to school there, but certainly Rwandan by birth, and she wanted to sort of help as well. And Grace is such a lovely person as well, and the media gave her such a hard time, but I mean absolutely a lovely person with Michael's interests always at heart, and a great passion for humanitarianism and for the HIV situation in Africa as well. Certainly, absolutely a wonderful person. And we talked to Nelson Mandela one night on the phone. Nelson had phoned Michael, and Michael came through and says, "It's Mandiba, do you want to speak?" And I didn't even know who Mandiba was because I never knew his sort of pet name.
Yeah.
So we were in a three-way conversation, but then he turned around and he says to me, "Patrick, he'll not remember anything of that. Be in Michael's confidence to have told me what it was, but it would lead to a situation where certain things would not be remembered in the same way." So he was going to deal with his son to set up everything. And it's a pity because when he went back to Las Vegas and that, then the possibility of that happening, sort of, got smaller, and then the concert thing came up. But that would have been such a wonderful thing because I think he often felt he hadn't done enough, I think, for Africa from the point of view of the music. Now, I know he gave almost 60 to 70% of all his humanitarian thing went to the African continent, so I don't mean in that sense. But when he was down in Africa before, in his concerts, it was often on the West Coast, and I think he would have loved to have been involved in a Band-Aid type thing for, sort of HIV in Africa, a humanitarian concert, and that would have been lovely to see because that would be the uniting of all the forces, his goodness, his roots, his continent, sort of helping people with that particular illness, and it would have been, I suppose, putting his stamp on something that the world's seen rather than all the time, sort of giving it behind him. I know he got involved in the 9/11. He always would have wanted to, in my mind, have done something similar to Africa because he mentioned it on at least 3 or 4 occasions.
So it's a shame.
I know his song did not come out for night. What more can I get?
You mean it wasn't released?
No, it was never released. They refused to release it.
Oh,
and
wow.
so it's on the internet, but they never released it, and it was for the people of 9/11. What more can I give?
Yeah, that's right.
And that is why we were playing it during 9/11. So I have no idea why they never released it.
Oh, that's a shame.
It is. The thing is that the last concert he gave was in the period that he was in Ireland. Remember when he went on stage to the World Music Awards in London? And in that whole period beforehand, he was like a little child being afraid because he was going to meet the Queen and he wanted to look his best. It was quite funny. And this was concerning him almost more than the song. So we had to go to his house late at night, the night before, that sort of thing, and to see somebody so famous in awe of... Yeah.
He always seems like he was very humble, no matter what level he reached of fame. It just seemed like it didn't. I mean, from an outsider looking in, it didn't seem like that ever really affected him. I mean, it didn't seem like it ever changed him.
Exactly. Yes, he certainly was in no way standoffish, and in no way did he put himself in any sort of elevated platform. Treated everybody that I ever seen him with exactly the same. And, I think he was a bit afraid of people to use him for their own ends. And, sort of, whenever there was a level of trust... Oh, I think so. Because he'd often ask me, such and such, or what do you think of them, that type of thing. So I think there was a certain, sort of level of, I suppose, more suspicion rather than paranoia. But then I'm surprised that I had him wanting to do things like walk into the Children's Hospital in Crumlin in Dublin, where there would have been I would have thought, a media fest. And then they would have followed him and they would have known where he was. I mean, you can imagine him walking into a kids' hospital in Dublin. Every phone and text would be, sort of going, and by the time he'd exit the hospital, there'd be 3 or 4 different television stations, let alone, sort of all the press, and they'd follow him in cars, they'd know where he lived, and you can't just, I think, turn up in a hospital and at 3 o'clock in the morning, because there's so many staff, I mean, that everybody would know very quickly. And I had some concerns as well, I suppose, that he would be put across in the wrong light. You know, just, you know, so soon, 2 years after the pedophilia case, well, almost like a year and a half, that suddenly, you know, sort of, because that did leave memories around the world. Still a lot of people, even though he was let off on every single charge, that almost don't believe the verdict of the court, you know. And it just goes to show you the power of the media and press, you know. But what a loss, and I think that it will be a long, long time before I think the planet ever has anybody of that level of, I think, integrity, spirituality, creativity, you know, again. Because he had them all in one package, really.
Able to connect all of us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter who we are, where we are. They said, well, is he a Muslim? Is he a Jew? Is he a Christian? Is he whatever? And nobody ever knew, because everybody always felt that Michael was a part of them.
There was a universality about him.
Yeah.
Or he was a Catholic in the proper sense of the word Catholic, if you know what I mean. I think, you know, it's Latin etiology is a universality of people also. He was a Christian, and he certainly maintained Christian beliefs in everything he did, analogous to other, you know, sort of great religious people that have lived on the planet. I know, Debbie, you don't necessarily want to draw too many conclusions there, because you're very strong, you know, sort of Christian beliefs yourself.
Yeah.
But, I mean, certainly, you know, a lot of people would see him analogous to almost, I suppose, the love that Jesus had for people, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I agree with that. I think because I think he looked to, you know, and he said it in interviews where he looked to God and to Jesus for his example. And I think that's where you can see that strong connection there. I think because he was trying to live that way. He was trying to always give and help other people, and so
he lived his faith.
Mm-hmm.
He lived his faith. There's no doubt about it.
Yes,
you know?
And how many people actually do? You know, there's not a lot of people that live their faith to that level. You know, I think that it made him stand out even more so, and in addition to being this, you know, what someone, you know, term an icon of you know, where everyone knew him or knew who he was, that even makes him stand out even further.
Oh, I agree with you. And, you know, of the people that we would know in our lifetime, that sort of the great humanitarians, they all had chinks in their armor. John Lennon, for all his peace mantras and all the rest, went on IRA marches, and I certainly had seen John, you know, sort of out marching under that banner. And, you know, you then take Mother Treacy, and a lot of her critics, you know, it's well publicized, would turn around and say that she brought people in, and often it was more a conversion, that she was trying to save a soul rather than save a body. I certainly wouldn't do anything to in any way denigrate her legacy or memory also, but with Michael it was different. Any of the badness that was associated with him was all things that were thrown at him by the media or made up.
Right.
And because he probably was so good, that was his own vulnerability, that he sort of tended to trust everybody.
They could not bear it. That was frightening.
Patrick, you wrote a great article that I just read a couple of days ago about Michael and your experiences with him. Wow, amazing article. It gave me chills, and I can't believe you're on the phone, so it's nice.